Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If we could take our seats, we'll get started. Just give everyone a minute here. Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much. We've reached almost the finish here. Some people would call this the graveyard slot, I think, but in our case, it's actually one of our most dynamic and interesting sessions with some very important decision makers on stage. We learned anywhere, of course, customer is king. The expression in China, I guess, is even customer is God, but we've even brought out our thrones on stage here with the comfy chairs for our panel to be seated on. They are so comfortable that, in fact, if you notice any of them nodding off, do feel free to throw something on stage to jolt them back awake, and we'll be sure. But we'll keep them quite active with our questions. Before I introduce the panel, I want to just remind everyone again, in front of you are evaluation forms. If you haven't already filled it in, can you please take a minute whilst we're doing the session here? Perhaps you can fill it in, and we'll have our team collecting them. You'll have a chance to pick them up at the very end of the session. We'll do a prize draw, and there'll be I think we have a bottle of champagne and a cake, and so some nice gifts for you. And again, it's really important to us what your feedback is on those. You know, we take it very, very seriously. I suppose a little recap of the event. Obviously, we've talked about so much the last 2 days. We started off yesterday with a session looking at sort of macroeconomic trends and some of the reform and the official developments there in China. We learned that the industry's growth is certainly slower than it has been for the past several years, perhaps, as across the whole Chinese economy, but that is not necessarily a reason for panic. This is, an opportunity to consolidate, improve services, improve the value chain. And indeed, we've heard over the last 2 days a lot of optimization projects, a lot of emphasis on supply chain strategies and optimization, whether it's IT or whether it's working together with providers. We heard as well, obviously, about the huge importance of e-commerce in China, whether that's completely changing automotive logistics or not, I guess, remains to be seen, but clearly the influence is there, and it seems to be coming more and more. So, understanding what we need to do to prepare and develop is obviously very important. And then today, of course, the One Road, One Belt, the Silk Road developments. I suppose we can say one road, one belt, many questions, right? Because there's a lot of things still to develop, but obviously there's many opportunities now. Many providers are offering services or planning them, and there's a lot of interest around it. So that's a theme that we expect to certainly continue throughout the coming years. And now we have, like I said, a chance to put some questions to a panel of OEMs and decision makers and tier suppliers. So let me start introducing. So starting at your right, we have Jack Huang, who's the Director of Supplier Development for MRO Purchasing and Logistics at Magna International China, of course, a very important tier supplier. Seated in the middle is, of course, Mr. Ma Zengrong, the Chairman of CALA, so Executive Vice President of CALA at CFLP. And then we're also very pleased to now welcome for the first time this conference to the stage, Mr. Xu Guangqing, Logistics Engineering and Operations Management Director at Shanghai General Motors. And I think you probably all have some familiarity with the gentleman at the end. You don't usually get to see Louis and I on stage at the same time in the same room. Some people, even question if we're different people, but now you can see that actually there are two of us, despite all the similarities. So we're going to kind of be co-hosting this, co-moderating, asking questions from both sides, and also participating in the discussions. And I hope that discussion will not just be limited to the stage, to just Louis and I, and you know, again, we'll have microphones, an opportunity for you to pose questions to our panel as well. So I'll kick us off with a kind of thought starter. Since we heard a lot about trying to improve supply chain optimization, improve the quality of services, even if the growth is slower. But at the same time, we hear a lot about a very price-focused, competitive environment in China, and I wondered if that is not a contradiction that that we're making any progress in overcoming. So, are you seeing more investment in logistics, in terms of systems, in terms of improvements? Do you see China continuing on the path of quality over necessarily quantity? Or are we still very much sort of locked in the price gouging, the price pressure environment? So perhaps we can start with Jack from Magna.
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity. As a tier 1 supplier, we always, I guess, in the middle between the OEMs and the supplier. We don't have the leverage as the OEs, like the Mr. Xi sitting right next to me. But also we feel lots of pressure from the OEs to get the products to them on time, at cost, and at quality. So again, Magna is a supplier, a tier 1 to most of the major OEMs globally. We will always look at the best way to manufacture our parts. So we are expert in manufacturing, and also Magna is one of the most diversified auto suppliers in the world, I guess. People probably know, other than all the components, we almost manufacture a car for the OEMs. Probably one of the most famous is the BMW Mini Countryman. You see driving on the street, they're actually built by Magna. So we want to work with our logistics partners. So we are not expert of shipping parts, right? We make parts, then we rely on the experts to ship our product from point A to point B. So again, we will look at not the cost, say the cheapest way, but always the best way, the most efficient way to help us to do that. So like this morning when we had this in the section discussion about the railroad, so my question always was that obviously we want more options, because in China right now, for instance, we only have, if I need to ship something from A to B, looks like the only option I have is a truck, or maybe I jump into my car to deliver my in person. But if there's a railroad option, obviously we will take it. So I guess investment and all that, that's part of a way of the cost of doing business. So that's the way I see it. Thanks.
关于这个问题啊，到底是要以量取胜，还是以技术来取胜？因为现在大家都知道，现在中国的经济已经进入一个这个平缓的增长的一个阶段，所以说呢，对于整个汽车行业来说，它已经没有前几年的那种快速发展的那种阶段，可能也是在进入一个低速增长的一个阶段。在这种情况下呢，实际上各个主机厂，因为我是主机厂，我代表的是主机厂来讨论这个问题的，各主机厂也面临着很多的一个成本问题。
We also face a lot of cost considerations. Many of our clients require our cars to be sold at a cheaper price. However, there's while the price cut required each year is 10%. So eventually, this cost would be imposed on, those cost savings would eventually be done or be transferred as a task assumed by auto parts. And eventually, probably logistics would have to take some cut as well. So I think logistic companies, service providers, as well as shipping companies would face some challenges, opportunities, and probably challenges are more. So I think eventually in the few years, we would not be able to win through quality. We would need to innovate, be more creative. So I think innovation should be part of our discussions in our future conferences. So I think shipping companies, service providers would have this new concept start to grow in their way of thinking. Over the last years, I think innovation is still inadequate. Thank you. First of all, I would like to comment on the macro economy before I comment on quality versus quantity. Now, we hit the new normal, but that doesn't mean that we're going to grow at a low speed. Now, the Chinese government is determined to maintain the GDP growth at around 7%. And probably this would be the number for the next few years. So I think China's economy is not going to come to a halt simply because we prioritizing over restructuring. So when we talk about quality and quantity in Chinese, we tend to put them in just simply two characters together. So I think improving quality and quantity should go hand in hand. They're not conflicting with each other. So now the cost, as mentioned by the previous guest, is down 10% every year. So I think logistics represents part of the cost. So it's probably one of the cost-saving areas that we can look at. However, the growth of automotive logistics is not shrinking in scale simply because of the price or cost cut. One of the reasons is we've grown at over 10% each year in the car market. And at the same time, the auto market, including auto logistics, have grown in volume, both in upstream and downstream of the chain. So I think that, of course, we need to find new engines of growth for the auto industry. And over the years, we realized that over the 10 years of development, we have come a long way. In the past, we were really poor at what we did. But if you remember, if you were around over 10 years ago, you would remember the NG Logistics, Minsheng Logistics. They had a really humble beginning, but now it has become a top logistic companies in China, and they're really good at managing, and the way they operate are very close to the leading player in international market. And Changzhou Logistics also is excellent. So I think now these logistics companies not only is serving foreign companies bringing their products to China, they're also serving Chinese companies going global. So I think they're well equipped to do business both ways. So first of all, we need to make sure that based on the economy is growing at 7%, and at the same time, the volume for passenger vehicles should be as high as 7% annual growth rate. I originally come from Shanxi province, so in the Tomb Sweeping Festival, I went back home and I realized how big the market is in the rural areas. There are so many cars, and I think it's booming. I think there is definitely an explosive growth in the auto market in rural or less developed areas. So in the past, in cities, 20 to 30% of the people living in urban areas, and 70 to 80% living in rural areas, and many of them work in cities as migrant workers, but they're still rooted in rural areas, so they always have a dream of eventually having a car of their own. So I think this dream will come true when they are more financially well off. So I think the opportunity or potential is definitely there. So first of all, we need to make sure that the macroeconomic environment is favorable and stable, and at the same time, we need to explore different ways of doing business, say probably using e-commerce. I think e-commerce is developing even better than that in the US or in the West. So first of all, we need to make sure of the volume and the quality keeps improving. So in the fourth session of the 18th Parties Congress, the government said that it will continue to develop and be open further. I think being open is a principle to a key to success. So when I look at the auto companies or the auto market, we would look at the US, the Europe, as well as China. And I think these are the three key markets that are really open. So I would say that be open to different ideas, embrace the global market, and there will be a lot of opportunities to come. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that? Jack, you mentioned about your parts makers, not logistics experts. And Mr. Xu, you talked about, logistics needing to be more innovative. How are the logistics companies developing? We've seen some growth and a bit of globalization, but how are the logistics companies developing in China? Both the local Chinese companies, how are they developing in the right way? And even the global companies who are entering the market, are they providing the right services? It's our 12th conference, so you hope that the plans are good and everything's developing in the right way. But we've got a mix of those companies out there. What advice would you still give them to provide the services that the Chinese automotive industry requires? Maybe Mr. Xu.
好，谢谢路易斯。实际上，这个话题去年的时候，我记得你已经问过我了。
I think this question came up last year. From last year's discussion, more or less the same question. Well, many of you probably work for multinational logistics companies. Some are local company representatives. Whether it's homegrown or international companies, you're here in China working for OEM companies as well as auto parts manufacturers. So I think probably some of the foreign companies find it difficult to adapt to the local environment, while the local companies find it clueless. They don't know how they can better improve themselves. So as an auto parts maker, I think whether you're a local or foreign company, you have to know the needs, identify the needs of your customers. You have to know the specific requirements, which can be really different because say I come from the General Motor, I think we have our own specific requirements, and other automakers, say the Chongqing Chang'an, would have completely different requirements because we have different logistics models. And if we sit on the same table and talk about our logistics models, we'll find that each is different and unique and very difficult to replicate across the board. So I think probably even logistics companies would have different logistics models specifically customized for their customers. So say a logistics model is used for my company would be different from Ford, right? So I think you need to identify the differences, and then you would have to act accordingly, put together different proposals. So that means you need to work closely hand in hand with your clients, and this wouldn't take just 1 day or 2 days. It will probably take longer than that. Well, actually, auto parts would want logistics companies to work as a strategic partners, be there for the long term. So we would know each other well, and we would know how the advantages of both companies as well as the needs from both companies, and then from there we could create the synergies and probably find sweet spots where we could innovate and where we can have the core competitive competence. So probably then the logistics companies would be able to contribute some cost savings as well as efficiencies for the auto part companies. That's what we're looking for. So first of all, I think you need to be close, stay close to auto parts companies. And some think that they know more than they actually do. But if you think about how many brands we actually have in General Motors, I think you probably don't have a clue. So I'm pretty sure that you don't know how many auto parts suppliers we have. You don't know the sales volume of different brands across different parts of China. So I'm pretty sure that the auto logistics companies here, as well as the shipping companies, the service providers here, wouldn't know the answers of any of these three questions. That's because you don't know us well enough. That's why sometimes the services that are available out there are not what we need. So I think whether you are a foreign or local company, you should get to know your clients better. Well, actually, we came into contact with DHL, APL, many of the big logistics companies, but they are not selected by General Motors for many reasons. Thank you.
Well, I guess I agree with Mr. Xu's assessment 100%. Communication, he mentioned many times. Communication is important. And also, from tier supplier standpoint, it's even more complicated than OEM. Like what I said at the beginning, I don't have the leverage as General Motors, but I have a lot more pressure than General Motors, and also I have more, also probably as many parts to ship as General Motors and other OEM. So I guess the way that the global logistics company that use your advantage, and also to work with the, I guess some of the local together, I think, which you guys can figure out a way how to work in China, because customer can only tell you what I want. Customer probably won't be able to tell you how. So that will be my, as non-logistic expert, what I can say here. Thank you.
So just a follow-up to that as well. Mr. Xu, you said about the complication, knowing so many different companies and the different requirements, and likewise for you, Jack, with all the, you supply so many car makers and you've got so many suppliers yourself. One head of logistics in China, I asked the question, what innovation would you like to see? And she actually replied, before I have innovation, I'd rather have standardization. Because there's so many complications on that side. Just standardize everything as much as possible. That's where the big savings would come, not so much from trying to do anything particularly different. And maybe to Mr. Ma, as well as CFLP and Color, you're exactly the kind of organization that can help at looking at standardization. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Ma?
If you have received the announcement made by the Auto Association of China, the Chinese government actually hosted a meeting on standardization. That means that the Chinese government is going to update the existing standards in China. In China, we have nation-level standards, and it also includes mandatory standards and optional standards. Below that, we also have industry standards, plus local standards. And in the future, environmental agencies, safety agencies, and those departments related to people's livelihood will issue those mandatory standards. So for different industries, they are going to issue guiding standards. We also have the association standards. So the auto logistics, we will also see these new standards coming out. We actually communicated with the Department of Transportation a few days ago. And we noticed that there's some confusion in the transportation industry. And the reason behind is no implementation of the standards. There is mandatory standards, but it's not implemented. As a result, there's confusion in the market, and it also resulted in the market chaos. So I believe we'll see some adjustments in the country level. From technology management to information, we're going to sort the standards, and we are also going to give a recommendation to the Chinese government which standards should be listed as nationwide standards, which should be used as industry standards, which standards are in conflict with those mandatory standards. And we're going to sort everything out. If you look at the Chinese policy, we'll see the negative standards list will also be a future trend. Because we are seeing increasing number of rules and regulations. So we actually have the job of sorting everything out. And also with the deepening of anti-crime, anti-corruption initiatives in China, the government will be transforming itself towards a government which focuses more on serving people. Now, when it comes to the implementation of GB 1589, I actually talked about this issue last year, and this year I think it's still necessary to comment on this. Now, the Auto Standards Association have issued the standard on the width, the height 4.2 meters and width 2.55 meters. That means our autos will be wider and higher than the regular trucks. The new car carrier, the relevant measurements are still under discussion, whether it should be 22 meters or less. If it's 22 meters, then we'll be able to ship 2 more vehicles compared to the European standards. And if it's 20 meters, then that will be pretty much the same size with the European counterpart. Of course, we also have agreed on the transition policy. For example, in the next 2 to 3 years, it will be a transition period that will gradually adapt or transform the existing carriers into the standards. But these have not been finalized yet. We already gave the feedback to the relevant authorities. And I think maybe it will not come out until the end of this year. After the standards are unveiled, I believe it will have an impact on the logistics industry, and there will be stricter regulations on some of the practices that's against the law. But if a major accident happens, then maybe we will see a expediting process. Otherwise, I think we will not implement it until next year. Now, Mr. Ma just talked about the standards. Now, in addition to the standards, actually, Louis also mentioned innovation. With regards to the innovation in the industry, personally, I think in the logistic industry, we see limited innovation. People are conservative, and there's still space for profit. I know there's still profit margin. That's why we are not forced to carry out innovation. And also the technologies are, for example, the supply chain 4.0. Actually, I don't think many people actually heard of it. So the technology is not mature enough to make these breakthroughs. Everyone just follow the wave, and that's basically the situation in the industry. Now, going forward, what will be the development trend? There are two kinds of innovation. One is the model innovation, which is to transform the existing way of operation. Whether it's for a finished vehicle or auto parts, we have existing way of transportation, but we really have to think outside of the box. We know the courier services industry in China is developing very fast. This industry in China actually is very innovative, very different from the industry in the foreign countries. So actually we can get some insight, inspiration from the courier services in China, because it is actually a part of the logistics industry. To my knowledge, most of the OEMs, the logistics company actually will help the OEMs to ship different parts separately. So can we think of a more integrated solution? Or can we ship the auto parts together with refrigerators? So this is the category which belongs to the model innovation. And the second category of innovation is technical innovation. A lot of the things are very mature. For example, the RFID, it's a very established standards with reasonable price. What will be the roles in the logistics industry? Will that foster new innovation? Also, whatever kind of innovation we adopt, we have to first define where is our core competitiveness. For logistics companies, what is the point for you to make profit? Is it traditional shipping? Traditionally, the profits come from the movement of trucks. However, will this still be the case in the future? Some companies have actually quit this business. They no longer use traditional waterways or railways. Instead, they establish a network that covers the whole country or a whole region. And with this network, you can outsource the other services to the third-party providers. We don't need to worry about your customers because we own the customers. So you have to make sure which business does your profit mainly come from. If you are innovative and if you think out of the box, maybe you will be the first mover. Otherwise, it will be a pure competition on price or cost, and that makes no sense. These are my personal ideas. Thank you.
Go back to the standard issue for a moment. It does seem as though every year we seem to be almost there, and then next year we hear again, and then again. So I guess, are you confident, Mr. Ma, that we really are getting that close to a decision? And then maybe my follow-up to that to Mr. Xu particularly, but also for Jack. In the meantime, I mean, are you looking to or have you put in any of your own standards in terms of the equipment that you will or won't use? So Mr. Ma mentioned that if a bad accident happens, then maybe things will happen faster, but hopefully we don't need that to be the thing that stops us from maybe making the right decision. So just to kind of, so we can start with Mr. Ma and then we can move from there. I was wondering, well, my first question was, are you confident that we're this close now to having a decision you mentioned by the end of the year? Or are you confident that that will be the case? Because we have heard that quite a few times before.
Well, actually, in the past few years, the industry association have been following closely on the latest development of the standards, and we are nervous to see the standards to come out. Why? Because I actually heard from the Association of Industry and Information. Now the first quarter has passed, and now we are in the second quarter. So I guess maybe the standards will be unveiled next year. Why I said I'm nervous? Because once the standards come out, the association have to coordinate with the different departments of the Chinese government. We also have to reach out to the major companies to change or retrofit the existing vehicles which are not up to the standards. We know what's happening now is that the shipping cost in China has been squeezed to very low, lower than the cost in many other countries. Once these standards are implemented, it will result in a much higher cost of shipping. And once the cost goes up, it's very difficult for us because it's very difficult to charge higher price. That's why I said I'm both excited and nervous. Once the standards is unveiled, we'll work together to make sure the enforcement of the standards and make sure that these standards will guide the whole logistics industry. I think this is the most critical step for the logistics industry. I don't know if you are you confident? Well, with regards to the standards, we have been talking about this every year. Whether it's true, we are not sure. I think it depends on the decisions of all the relevant Chinese authorities. As Mr. Ma said, once the standards is really implemented, it will have actually a setback. I don't know, maybe a very large influence on the logistic industry because it takes a long time for us to retrofit those existing vehicles. So in that period, for the OEMs, they may not be able to ship all those cars, and then it will necessarily result in a price war, which will result in a lower profit margin. As a result, I think we will see a wave of M&As in the auto industry. We know the auto industry and some auto companies will also be drawn out of competition. We'll see some bankruptcies. But auto industry is a pillar of China, so I don't think the Chinese officials want to see the bankruptcies of a lot of those companies. So I think the government will be very cautious with regard to this issue. And we are also actually thinking, how can we mitigate the risk? For example, we can use a combination of waterway and railway shipping. And the trucks will only be used in short distance. This can actually reduce the risk, but the risk is still high for us. Mr. Ma said he actually is anxious to see the standards coming out. However, for us, for companies, we are actually reluctant to see the standards implemented because it will have a very large impact on our industry.
About the One Road, One Belt, the Silk Road developments. Mr. Ma, from your opinion in terms of the automotive industry, just how big of an impact, how important is the development of this sort of option, this rail and this trade option? And if the other panelists want to also comment from their company's perspective, whether this development will be important specifically to General Motors or to Magna, for example.
I think the strategy of One Belt, One Road accelerated the pace for China's logistics industry to go global. Without this initiative, some leading auto companies in China are already exploring the ways to go global. But in the past, they mainly focus on exploring their existing customers. Now with this new initiative, along the route, the Belt and the Road, the process has been accelerated. But even before that, Changjiu already had presence in Hamburg. In Thailand, we also have a subsidiary. I know Changjiu and Andy have been exploring the ways to cooperate with the partners in the North American market.
Well, I think One Belt, One Road is almost working like a dagger because probably that's where the blade would be really sharp and it would be really forceful. So I think that One Belt, One Road focuses a lot on the key countries as well as key cities. So I think we got a lot of promises from the government, and I think it would be just like a wing or wings for the auto logistics company. Well, of course, many of the companies going global would need the support of financing. So I think financing definitely plays a very important role in helping companies going global. And this is my personal judgment. Also, well, today, actually we have talked about that. There were around 22 railroads running along Euro-Asia railway. So eventually there would be a lot of departure, very comprehensive coverage or network covering China as well as Europe. Of course, the maritime Silk Road is less analyzed and talked about because this is a traditional route from Southeast Asia, from China to Southeast Asia to Europe. So I think One Belt, One Road has, I think, concentrated our focus and attention on what we can do. And I think this is a promise, sort of a promise from the government. So I hope that next year, probably the magazine could invite more of the companies relevant to One Belt, One Road to be here to probably talk about the future cooperations of helping logistics companies going global.
So, Mr. Xu, do you have any comments on what it would mean for you?
这个问题我有点为难，因为
I'm in a tough position to comment because Shanghai Auto is a JV, while One Belt, One Road is about helping domestic local brands going out. It's about having favorable policies in place to help local companies. Well, just now, Mr. Yele from the import and exporting company of Shanghai Automotive probably would be in a better position to comment. But I think that if the One Road, One Belt is out there in place, I think that the volume for logistics would expand. Well, our company is located in Shanghai, and I think we stand to gain if the One Belt, One Road is available. Say if the road or the belt is really wide, and we would have a really great volume. We already have a great volume, and then it would be easier for us to ship our products to South southwest at a more efficient and lower price. So this is what I would like to see.
The theme of our conference this year is from big to strong. As you can see, if you look on your screen, I like to do things backwards. I went from strong to big. And I hope the translators have been friendly with me and didn't say from strong to fat. But the question for the panel is, if it's possible to think of one thing, and it could be a broad thing, it could be innovation, it could be technology, but what do you think is the one thing that will make automotive logistics to, from, and in China go from big to strong? Jack?
Well, let's talk about the government policy. I have no comment, but I do have one, I guess, one popular saying is that walk the talk, right? That's what we all say. So we will see. As a tier one supplier, obviously we want to see that if we have a more efficient way to ship my product from point A to point B to satisfy my customer, that's why we are here for. So that will be my comment.
Mr. Xu, what will make automotive logistics go from big to strong?
Well, if I am an entrepreneur, I wouldn't go for big, I would go for strong. Because being big in China is very difficult. If you don't have enough of background or connection, the really good connections with the government, you can't be big, really. However, you can be strong as you can. As long as you know your core competence, you could be really strong. And if you have some unique models of your own that really work for you, say some auto logistics companies are building up their network. And I think that they're on their way to be strong. As long as you're in a niche market in a place where nobody has been there before, then you can be strong. I think big and strong are connected, are put together, mentioned together in China, in Chinese. However, China is already really big. We have GDP volume second only to the United States, probably overtaking the United States in a few years. But we're not quite there yet as for being strong. But we're not there yet because in the past we were all over the place, but few regulations or good patterns that really work for the market economy. So in the past we were a centralized planned economy. So I think the model that worked in the past would not work now. So probably we lack the kind of standardization or organization that help us to be strong. However, as there are more rules in place as well as we get more organized, I believe that Chinese people, first of all, are very industrious. Second, they really are eager to learn, and they're also very hardworking and smart. And we always talk about how Chinese people should be down to earth and try to pay attention to all different directions. So I think that, first of all, we need to be attuned to the market dynamics as well as the rules that are already in place. And second, we need to be innovative. Now, Mr. Premier Li Keqiang for several times have encouraged the development of e-commerce. I think that e-commerce, because in China is in a leading position among the world market, so I think e-commerce has become a really well-established industry now. So eventually, probably they would be able to transform themselves to something else. So probably we would be able to sidestep the road that has been well traveled by other Western countries, by the West, and probably we would be able to piggyback on the previous experience or other countries and grow further.
Questions, maybe we can ask the audience, or if there's anyone from the audience that wanted to pose a question to our panel. You're all... okay, we have a question in the middle here. We have a mic coming behind you now. Right, the other way. There you go.
Okay, my name is Chuju Shen, and I'm working for Yuko Car Carriers in maybe, actually my company is like bring the CBU from overseas to China, and so from China to overseas. And I think today everybody come to automotive logistics, but I mean, we have many people, but today it's like all we are actually working slightly different area. When you talk automotive logistics, I can say somebody working for sea, somebody working for river, somebody working for land side. And also somebody working for KD, and somebody working for spare part, and somebody working for CBU, like me. And also somebody working for domestic market, and somebody working for import and export, like me. And today, I feel like there are not so much subject about ocean side. So today's main issue looks like some KD, spare part, inland, especially it's like today we are talking about it's like Itai Iru, right? But so now I'm working in China 4 years, and especially for the CBU side and sea transportation. I mean ocean transportation for import and export. It's like so far in my business field, I'm quite happy with our customer. And if somebody asks me, it's like, what should be, as a logistic provider, have it to be better? And I can say it's like already mentioned by some kind of information sharing. We can say it's like a communication, because I also working in, it's like Europe, in Korea, but it's like compared with the other area, it's like, it's this kind of communication, information sharing is like a little bit less than other area. It's like a cost saving. I know this is everywhere in the world. It is nothing some special in China. And second thing is, one thing I ask to our customer is some kind of planning function. It's like when I work with other manufacturer not in China, normally we're talking about this like next year, 3 year, 5 year, how many they will export to other areas, something like this. But today my feeling is maybe not every Chinese car manufacturer, but some of them, and most of them actually lack of this kind of, it's like a planning function, because I know it's like for the Chinese car manufacturer, this is really difficult to forecast overseas market. But at least I believe as a car manufacturer, they have certain planning for the 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. And this can be changed or adjusted according to the market situation, I think. And another thing is some partnership between it's like car manufacturer and logistic provider. I think yes, this is something different. I think it's like as we said, it's like customer is like decide and we have to follow. I mean this also is like everywhere. This is even in Germany. I know it's happened, but I mean this is more often happening in China, and this might be a little bit, I have to say, this kind of things is like developed in China. I think you will have more good, nice, efficient automotive logistic provider in China, I think. This is my comment. Actually, I have 2 questions. Because today, I mean, it's like logistic and shipping cannot create the trading and sales. We always like follow by trading and sales. So this is the reason I ask about this like sales. What should be the China market in 5 years later? So my first question is, what shall be the Chinese market, domestic market in 2020? And last year I heard it's like 23 million cars were sold out last year. And I don't know, it's also difficult, not so easy to forecast, but one of panel can ask me, so what shall be the Chinese domestic market in 2020? And my second question is like now, these days it's like Chinese export is like done by local brand, not the joint venture. So my question is there any possibility for joint venture can do export? And if there are some, I can ask, what should be the possibility of a joint ventures export? It's like under 50 or over 50. So that's it. Thank you.
So first question was if someone wants to take a stab at guessing the market in 2020, the size of the market. And then the second question is perhaps specifically maybe for Mr. Xu in some ways, or for other, do you imagine exporting more from China? So perhaps Mr. Ma, do you think, what do you think the Chinese market will be in 2020?
Well, to be honest, I never thought about the question, but I feel that probably now we have around 150 million car owners. So among the 1.3 to 1.4 billion population, that means the car ownership is only 10%. I think the car ownership is pretty low. So that also means a great opportunity for all of us. I think in the next few years, every year, even if there's 10 million new cars on the road, then over the next 5 years, there would only be 50 million new cars on the road. I'm not even sure whether it would grow that fast at that pace, but I think that the market is there, the potential is there, and I personally am optimistic about the growth in the next few years. But I'm not sure of the output of 2020. Some would say that it would be 30 million. I don't think it would be very difficult for us to hit the 30 million threshold. But first of all, I think auto logistics companies would, first of all, need to look at the growth. But I think 23 million is already a really big market in its own. So I'm very optimistic. Now, energy is not much of a problem in China, but talking about renewable energies or EVs doesn't mean that the cars using traditional energy would diminish. Now, about JVs going global or exporting, I'm not sure whether Mr. Xi can comment on that, whether Shanghai Motor have some sort of a plan to export. Well, I think I would not comment on the numbers for 2020. Well, this is a math game. You can do the math. If it grows by 7%, then I think you can easily project the number by 2020. And there's also an association called the Automobile Industry Association, where they would publish a monthly data that's available to all of you. So I think you can just go and check out the numbers there. So another question that came up is whether JV companies could eventually export to other countries, and this is a sensitive question, I think. Actually, SAIC export quite a large number of cars. Probably we're among the largest exporters, be it finished vehicles as well as auto parts. We are the largest exporter. But we still can't really compete with Changchun or the Great Wall, a local company. I think that it is the largest domestic exporter, and we're still left behind. But as a JV, there are many restrictions being imposed on exporting. Because as a JV, the headquarters, the General Motors is a global company where it has operations across the world as well as the sales network. So even the Shanghai General Motors, well, all the numbers, all the vehicles that manufactured by Shanghai General Motors would be distributed by the global network. And this is how the joint venture partnership set up right at the beginning. So I believe that Shanghai Volkswagen, as well as the FAW Volkswagen, will face similar restrictions as well. So the general framework agreement right at the beginning, set out at the beginning, has already determined how the cars manufactured by those JVs are distributed. So of course we try to export some cars of our own. Made in China means probably lower cost, but still pretty decent quality, and we're getting stronger. So I think probably in the near future that made in China by JV companies could be exported, and probably there will be more exports from JVs. We definitely have the advantage in costs as well as advantage. Also, another partner, say the foreign company, the foreign partner, would have to recognize the cost as well as the quality advantage. So I don't think they would step in the way of JV's cars being sold at other countries.
I think our time's up, so I just wanted to wrap up a little bit. Just firstly, before we finish, a reminder about the evaluation forms. Please complete the evaluation forms. They're very important to us and we take them very seriously. If you have completed it, we'll be collecting them in a second for a draw, for a prize draw. So if you have a evaluation form, maybe raise your hand with the evaluation form and we'll collect it now. Also, as a special treat and at the request of Christopher, we're going to be doing a special dance now and a song on Little Apple. So, no, I just had, sorry, I just had a message. We're running out of time. So sorry about that. So make sure you're here for next year, and maybe we'll be able to do it then. Before I completely finish, I just want to thank the panel again for a great, very honest discussion at the end. So thank you very much to the panel. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the last two and a half days, starting with the cocktail reception. I think we've had some very interesting discussions, beginning with the opening session where we looked at getting government and important associations giving us their viewpoints, through to more specifically on suppliers and supply chains, looked at e-commerce to see the impact that's going to have on the automotive industry, on the retail industry, on logistics, on the service parts industry. I think today with the One Belt, One Road and Silk Road stream that we had from our great partners, CFLP and Color, you could see by the interest and the questions we got throughout the 2 days on that subject that was an interesting thing and something that logistics have to be involved in. So I just wanted to also take this opportunity to thank our sponsors for their support. As I said before, the reason they sponsor is they've got services, products, knowledge that's specifically for automotive logistics for China. So, you know, if you haven't had a chance to visit their stands or meet their people, you will find more information on their websites or in the program. So I'd like to thank our gold sponsor, Jeffco, our global sponsors, CTM Law and Wallenius Wilhelmsen Logistics, our silver sponsors, AutoLink, BLG Logistics, Chang'an Minsheng Logistics, FedEx, Global Logistics Properties, Goodpack, Inform, Priority Freight, and UTI. I'll just do the draw very quickly. This one doesn't have a name on it, so I'll have to choose another one. It's lucky that one didn't have a name because one of the complaints I had was my board head, the light was shining too much off it, so I didn't want to give them a prize anyway. This is for prize winner here, DB Schenker, Jeff Sichema, Is Jeff here? Oh, there he is. Jeff? And I don't even know where the prize is. Is it here? But we'll pass you the prize, Jeff, and give it to you in a second. But thank you for completing the evaluation form, because that's, all right, the prize is a small thing, but hopefully more importantly is the knowledge that we can get from it, because it's your conference and what we can do to try and improve that. And hopefully with the feedback you've got, the positive reaction for today, I hope that our partners, CFLP, who are a fantastic organization, if you're not members, make sure you become members. We work with a lot of associations around the world, but one of the most active and really try to make a difference to their organization is very definitely CALA and CFLP. So please offer them your support, and we're very proud to be partners of ours. We'd all like to see you back in 2016 for the lucky 13th Automotive Logistics China Conference in Beijing. So thank you very much for all your participation, and we look forward to working with you again. Thank you very much.